Hey everyone, I'm Kevin with JcrOffroad. Today in the garage we're going to be installing our Crusader rear bumper on this 2021 Ford Ranger. So we're starting off underneath the truck. We did already remove the spare tire, so go ahead and do that if you haven't done so already, or if yours is still in place under your truck. With that out of the way, you have easier access to everything you need to do under here, starting with the main electrical connector. This is on the inside of the driver's side frame rail, and you just have a center kind of press in tab like most of these connectors that you need to press in on, and then you should be able to pull those two halves apart. From there, the only thing holding this bumper on is the hitch mounting hardware underneath, since the bumper is kind of tied to the hitch. So you're going to need a 21mm socket. You've got two bolts, one on each side, that are easily accessible right here on the back side of the hitch tube, and then two more just up in front of it. So with our truck up here on a lift, we supported the bumper with our transmission jack. You could do a similar thing on the ground with a floor jack, or even just grab a couple friends to help hold this while you pull your hardware. Again, to pull that hardware, it's a 21mm socket, so we've got that. We've got the bumper supported, and we're going to pull all 6 of these fasteners, allowing us to drop this away from the truck. So doing your best to stabilize this and make sure it doesn't run into any of the tailgate or bed components on the truck, you can kind of lower it down and pull it back. With this removed from the truck, we flipped it around so that we can see the wire harness and the back side of all the sensors and plugs in here. And what we need to do is get this harness and those sensors and things out of this bumper so that they can be installed into your new bumper. So we'll kind of just start on one end and work our way across here. So out here on the end of the bumper, we'll start with this backup or proximity sensor. The way you're going to remove these is they just have a tab, both top and bottom, that need to be pushed out. And then with one hand pushing in from the outside or the painted side of the bumper, you can pop all of those free. You can repeat that on all 4 sensors. Moving in from there, you want to make sure to disconnect any of these clips holding the harness to the bumper. Some of these are not critical. We're not reusing any of them, so you can also just cut them at the zip tie portion of the clip, as long as you're using caution not to damage the harness itself. From there, we do want to retain this license plate light, so we first are going to grab this connector and twist so that we can pull the bulb out of there. Be careful with that so you don't damage the bulb, of course. And then to salvage this housing, you press in on the tabs and then push that in toward the center of the bumper. You can then pull that around and reinstall this so that your bulb is nice and safe inside of there for now. The license plate light removal is the same over on the other side, and then we do have a few more clips here through the center that we're going to remove, or cut in this case. And from here, the last thing holding us up will be removing the trailer plug. You will have to unplug this, so you'll need something like a flat screwdriver to pop the locking clip in here, and then you can press in on the center of that and pull back to release the plug. And from there, you can press in on these 2 metal tabs to pop that plug forward and out of the bumper. And then we'll go ahead and, again for now, just snap this back in place. So that should be everything. We should now be able to feed those wires back in toward the center from the outside and then remove this from the bumper. Just make sure you pay attention to the orientation of that original main harness plug so that you get it installed on the driver's side into your new bumper. So at this point, we're going to grab our rear bumper. We're going to have to install a few accessories on this before we get to that wire harness and getting it installed. So first, I have the lower trim bezels here. They do have a cutout that's going to accept those backup or proximity sensors, and the way we're going to do that is by first installing one of the provided grommets into each of these locations. You just need to start one side of that, and you can kind of walk it into the hole here, making sure that the grommet kind of fully seats around this outside edge. And then using the black 1/4 button heads along with serrated flange nuts in your bolt pack, we'll lay these on this lower face here with that tab recessed into the bumper, and we can start installing that 1/4 inch hardware to secure this in place. When it comes to the nuts, you will have to kind of reach around underneath the bumper to get all of those started. Once you have all of your fasteners started here, grab a 5/32 hex to work your way through and tighten these up. You can then grab your remaining grommets and install these into the other trim bezel as well as the larger round holes out on each end of the bumper. From there, this is a great time to get your pod lights installed while you have full access to the inside of the bumper. We give you a nice slotted mounting tab inside of here for that. We're then going to work on installing our license plate light housings into the bumper. Now this side I have already kind of prepared and installed once to show you how it goes. Basically, just to give you a quick look at it from this side, you're going to slide these in and then you will have to drill and bolt through the back face in here to the provided tab using a 1/4-20 button head bolt with a flange nut. We are first going to have to do a little bit of modification to the light before it can go in there. So on the opposite side, we have an unmodified light housing. So first, these two tabs, just to show you how this orients in here, are going to go in toward the bumper, and that's kind of how this lines up and slots into the hole there. But the very first thing we're going to do is remove those specific tabs. So first, usually you can just break them off by folding them back. And then we do want to remove this leftover material as well to make this pretty much nice and flat. So we're just going to use a grinder for that. With that nice and smooth, you can do a quick test fit in here to see how it's lining up and how well it's sitting flush to the material there. You may have to come out to the other side and just grind these two tabs ever so slightly inside of here to make kind of their grip range a little bit wider to fit this wider material. And basically what you're looking for is this whole lens and housing to sit nice and flat in here. We will spin this around to show you how we locate and drill that hole in this passenger side housing. But before we do that, you can install the 1/4-20 button head bolt on this side, obviously, because I've already done it, and you'll want to have a 5/32 Allen key handy to fit down in here to tighten things from the opposite side. Then viewing it from the inside of the bumper, you have your light housing that you'll slide into place here. With that pressed nice and flat from the outside and making sure you don't have your fingers down inside of the housing itself, you can grab a 1/4-inch drill bit and using our bracket as a guide, drill your mounting hole into that factory housing. So that'll wind up looking something like this. We can then reinstall this and install again that 1/4-inch button head. And like we just mentioned, with that 5/32 hex from the outside, you can come in here with a 7/16 socket or wrench and tighten these up. Lastly, we'll grab our trailer plug and install it into the fixed bracket here on the bottom of the bumper. That should just press in and snap in place. Now before the wire harness can go into the bumper, we need to essentially increase the length of wire between the two outside sensors at each end of the harness. The way we're going to do that is by carefully either cutting or peeling back the tape, exposing the loom, and then allowing us to expose the wire here. Essentially, we're trying to gain about 3 to 4 inches of wire in this location. So I'm going to carefully kind of score this and work at opening it up. Once you have the wires exposed there, you may have some tape to remove here where they kind of Y together, and that should allow you to separate the two sections of the harness, essentially pulling this one back away from the other. You can then trim off this excess or tape it back in, whatever you prefer there, and then ideally you tape up all of the remaining wire to kind of protect that over time, and that should give you the length you need. You can then repeat that process on the other end of the harness. Once you have that modified on both sides, it's just a matter of routing this now into the bumper, making sure that all of those connections line up. And you can get your trailer plug plugged back in. You can get your license plate lights snapped back into their housings. And then we'll show you how to do the sensors into those grommets in just a moment. With one hand on the inside of the bumper and the other out here supporting the grommet, you should be able to pretty easily press these sensors into the grommet. And then obviously you'll notice that typically these outside two are body colored. That is, as far as we know, just paint, and you may be able to either lightly dust them in black, or we've had pretty good success just applying small black vinyl circles to those to kind of black those out and make them disappear. If that doesn't bother you, it's totally fine to just leave it as is. Now, before you lift your bumper into place up here on the truck, we do want you to install a nut tab on each frame rail. So there is a left and right here. This one is going to be your passenger side. You're going to slide this in. There's kind of two layers of material, so there's a layer going across the frame roughly right here. You want to go underneath that and slide it in until it's lined up with this round hole, and then we'll kind of just let that rest right in here, and we'll do the same thing on the other side. From here, we're using our jack again to lift it up into position, and we're going to be reinstalling the factory hardware at least into those 6 lower holes to start lining things up and kind of secure it in place while we install our final hardware and brackets. You want to take your time with this step, making sure that you're cautious as you move this into position, making sure that you're not bumping it into the painted body panels on the truck and potentially damaging anything there. So again, this is a good step to have a friend or two on. And then we have it now kind of rotated into place with just 2 bolts started. We'll then start the remaining 4 factory fasteners. You'll thread these in pretty close to all the way. You don't want them quite tightened up yet, but that'll support the bumper while we install those other brackets and we can get our jack out of the way. Now additionally, before your bumper goes on this inside of the driver's side frame rail, you may have these clips in place here still, or they may have come off when you disconnected this wire harness. If they're still here, you want to get these removed as well, because we are going to be bolting a bumper mounting surface in right here, and we want this nice and flat and clear of any debris. Next, coming under here, you can reach around the side with one arm and you should be able to grab and manipulate that nut tab to line it up with the hole here in both the frame and the bumper. You'll then grab the 1/2-inch hex bolts and washers in your bolt pack and start one into each of those nut tabs. The last piece you'll be installing here are these outside tie-in brackets. There is a left and right to these, so pay attention to the orientation there. You can then slide them in against the outside of the bumper mounting bracket here. You'll pass another 1/2-inch bolt with a washer through here, and then up top you'll have another washer along with a nylock nut. You'll then install 5/16 button head hardware through both the side and front mounting flanges. With all of your hardware loosely started, take a step back and make sure that your bumper looks both centered, left to right, and nice and even front to rear on all of the outside gaps and the main flange between the front of the bumper and the bed. And you can then start tightening this stuff up. So again, it's your 21 mil socket for that factory hardware underneath. You'll then need a 3/4 socket and wrench for out here, and a 3/16 hex for these button heads. Then you want to be sure to come back in here and reconnect your wire harness. And from here, we're going to tie all this wiring up just using cable ties. The easiest way to do it is to tie these to the receiver tube running from side to side on the bumper. And this is also a good time to come in here and run wiring for your pod lights. With all your mounting hardware tight, you can move on to installing adventure carriers if you're going to do so. For that, you're first going to want to check out the adventure carrier installation video. That's going to give you the most in-depth look at how to get the spindles, the pin tracks, the latch brackets, and everything you'll need there installed along the way. For those of you that are not installing those, you're not installing them at this time, or you're only putting them on one side or the other, we provide you black plastic caps to cover both top and bottom of your spindle sleeve holes on here. We do recommend you put a little bit of black RTV silicone type sealant on there to seal these up long term to prevent any rust, corrosion, dirt, debris, whatever it may be from getting in there over time. From there, you can install your license plate. You're either going to use the provided bracket. We've got a pivot bracket as well as a plate mount that will bolt together and mount in the center here. Otherwise, you're going to want to buy the relocation kit to get that out on your carrier and move your license plate light and everything out to there. From there, you can get your license plate installed. Now, we do provide you a mounting bracket for the plate as well as a pivot bracket that are all going to bolt in right in the center here. Those are going to allow you to pivot your plate up and out of the way, giving access to the hitch receiver tube. If you don't want to have that there, if you want to have quick access to the receiver tube all the time, you can pick up our license plate relocation kit and get that out on a carrier along with your spare tire. With that installed, that's pretty much a wrap for this installation. As always, if you guys have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can always send us an email at info@jcroffroad.com or call us at 269-353-1184.